Such a rough life you live, bro.
So hard. Can't show his face. He's ashamed.
Well, maybe you guys should watch the cold open from last week's episode, guys.
Oh, we're totally shaming you.
Yeah, to turn your camera on.
You're a shamed boy. We're gonna call this the Shame Boys.
The shaming.
All right. Well, here we go. Let's.
Goodbye.
Okay, I guess he's gone.
Okay.
I have nothing to say. I literally have nothing to say, other than don't do drugs.
Okay. Yeah, well, welcome to episode 168 of the Show Boys podcast. My name's Pixel Nick, and we are joined sort of here by our mediocre producer dad, and I'm not really sure what's going on with him, but also more importantly, who is actually going to commit to being here, but off camera. That's a showboysmedia.com Mike.
Yeah, I legally changed my name when we moved to Florida. It's showboysmedia.com Mike.
So might as well change my name.
Yeah.
Do the whole thing.
Yep. I'm here. Not on camera because I'm still outside in my dark patio.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm glad that you said it's episode 168 because when I set up the studio, I mistakenly put it as 167. So
womp womp.
I could have got a little confusing.
That's okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm still getting used to it. I'm still amazed at last week's episode. You correctly got the following week's like topic because you're like, oh, next week Nick and Chad will be talking about The Sopranos. I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, oh wait, he's right. But we recorded weeks ago. But it's not coming out till it's all confusing now.
It's like episode release inception.
Yeah, and I was listening to Pokey Boys episode season 3 premiere.
Wow,
I think.
Look at you! We're gonna make another one here, Dad. We have another Pokemon convert, I think, on our hands.
Oh, actually, I listened to the one before that with Jared, the the in between season episode, and you guys talked about like recording like Inception because you guys are all over the place in terms of when you record versus when you release.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what's going to start happening.
Pokey Boys has trained my brain for the awkward recording and release scheduling.
Oh, good. Glad one of us has it under wraps. But to first shout out top tier Patties, our patrons, Yusuf H and Tim B. If you weren't here last week, we did revamp our patron tiers and their benefits, right? We have these cool new avatars that Dad can make any of our tier 4 patrons if you sign up today.
I think Tim B I just gave him his avatar today, actually.
Yeah, we just distributed our top tier patron Tim B his Giga profile.
Yeah, Giga avatar.
Giga Tim. They're the Giga avatars. That's what they are dubbed. Appreciate his input on things, but yeah, he jumped all over it. He's like, "How do I get one of those?" I like how slowly, like every time it happened with the Pixel avatars too.
It did.
That's just
Tim basically just creates the top tier patron rewards. He's pretty much solely responsible for them.
Tim, what do you like? Okay,
yeah,
that's what everyone else gets.
Yep.
But of course, we're releasing the unedited versions of our episode recordings right away as soon as possible on Patreon for our tier 2 friends. And tier 3, I forget what
you get your exclusive episode every month.
That's right. You get the exclusive episode every month. And of course, we care more about you if you suggest episode topics, and you could come on an episode with a topic of your choice.
That's right.
So
make it happen, guys.
Do it. Yep. Get that out of the way. And of course, OLED Switch giveaway. Really want to give this away. So everyone
Yeah,
subscribe.
help us give it away before the next Switch comes out. That'd be fantastic.
Yes, or we're just gonna have to like lower the giveaway to like
The
500.
next subscriber gets an OLED Switch.
Subscribe, prove it, and comment in the video, and boom, it's yours. Is that official?
Nah.
Yikes. Nah. Now that that's out of the way, tonight's topic. Mike, I appreciate you jumping on this show so quickly to record this episode. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
No appreciation to Dad. He was
Nope.
He was the first person that I reached out to watch this series and record with me because I was like, I don't want to bother Mike with it. He's a busy guy, and you kind of been off a show kick, but you pulled through.
Pulled
Um,
through for the
OG
boys,
OG showed up, and
right?
if you wouldn't have, we wouldn't be. I don't know what we'd be talking about tonight.
That's a good question. Probably nothing, honestly.
Yeah, we would have just regrouped.
Yeah,
A
I
couple
probably would
things.
just be playing Dredge right now.
Yeah, Dredge. I would be playing Warcraft Rumble on my phone, or I'm doing really good on my Lego display over there. I've been making some
Full
great.
disclosure, you can't even see me, so you don't even know if I'm not playing Dredge right now.
That's rude. Well, if you're anything the way Dad plays handheld games, I would hear it. Like I would hear the full game more than you could hear it because you have headphones on. So I would hear it 4x louder than you would be hearing it.
Oh yeah, that was classic Dad.
Classic Dad. You can hear it. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Start to mute you. Mike shows up, just mutes people. Anyways, tonight's topic. We are going to be covering Netflix's newer miniseries called PainKiller,
Right.
starring Uzo Aduba. She was from Lightyear and Orange is the New Black. Matthew
I'm
Broderick.
glad you tackled that name because I was not sure how.
Aduba. Aduba? Aduba.
Yeah.
Aduba? Sure. Matthew Broderick, obviously,
Yeah.
Bueller.
Ferris Bueller.
Yep. And our boy Tim Riggins, everyone knows him. He also goes by the real life name of Taylor Kitsch. Kish?
Tim Riggins. Who the heck is
Yeah,
that?
from Friday Night Lights.
Never watched it.
Okay.
But did you know the whole time we were watching, I say like we watched it together. The whole time I was watching this, I was like, why does Arthur Sackler look so dang familiar? he's freaking Agent Coulson from the MCU.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is weird. It's weird seeing him go from like, big government into like Big Pharma. I guess that's not that far of a leap, but
That's that's totally him. I didn't even think about that. Um, yeah, the ghost kind of the haunter, um, the haunting of Matthew Broderick's character.
yeah, yep, that's him.
But
Hold on.
this is a pretty cool miniseries. It's kind of following a little bit of a trend line of now that like some drug companies, particularly this one, Purdue, actually did in real life kind of get shut down for like their distribution and tactics and pushing opiates through the 90s and 2000s. We have a lot of different shows, movies that are coming out, documentaries that cover essentially our opioid epidemic here in America. So this follows that line of thought, and it's cool that I like that it's a very heavily dramatized version. They say that outright, but they also have the the family of some victims testimonials at the beginning of each episode.
Yeah,
Um,
super sad.
yeah, very sad, and it kind of like grounds it in like they're like, hey, this is all very real, but obviously we've taken a lot of creative liberties to convey some messaging here that we feel deeply about. Um, but 45-minute episodes, 6 episodes, mini series, easy watch, not slow by any means. At least I didn't think so. um how did you feel about the pacing, Mike, and like getting through it?
Yeah, I thought it moved along pretty well. I I ended up watching this like during the workday on one of my many monitors, and honestly, after an episode finished, I was like, well, I might as well just start another one. Like I wanted to keep going, but um, whenever I watch a show for the podcast, I really like to try to space it out to where I finish it the day before or the day of when we record. So I had to like temper myself. So I watched um, pretty much two a day, two Monday, two Tuesday. Then I watched one Wednesday and the last one today. Yeah, I thought it moved along really well. I loved the intros. They were very sad and, like you said, grounded each episode um, in a very good way because while when you say it's like heavily dramatized, I think like when I hear that, I think of like super serious, like drama, like I can't
Right.
even think of a show right now, but like whatever the most like dramatic show you could think of.
Handmaid's
Um,
Tale.
yeah, something like that. But this embellished a lot of things and was kind of
Yeah.
centric with the way it proved some points, which I think is very helpful and really helped drive home the points they were trying to make. Obviously, I think they did a lot of that tongue in cheek, like intentionally on purpose to be like way over the top with things.
Yeah.
uh, but it all pretty much landed for me. I really liked all of the over the topness, specifically the flipping of Dr. Curtis Wright from the FDA into Purdue Pharma when
Mhm.
he approved OxyContin and then went to work for Purdue, and like that whole montage of him with Rick Ross playing Every Day I'm Hustling and like that whole scene, I was just like, this is brilliant.
Yeah, they did, and that's the thing too. Is like they're telling a real story about real events, and but they really embellish like the irony in that situation with that ridiculous kind of like montage of it.
Yeah.
And it's not just you're watching it and they like reveal that and you're kind of like, oh wow, that was pretty crappy of them. It's like they really layer it in with like the song, the jumping in the pool.
Yeah, he's like going into a pool with these ridiculous like nose plugs with like two Oxycontin cheerleaders like cheering him on. It's just so ridiculous.
Right. And there's the creative liberties. Whomever you know created this series, they didn't shy from that while also covering a very serious topic.
Yeah,
It,
Peter
it worked.
Bird was the director, by the way,
Okay.
of the entire season. Did a really great job, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and it was like it was like tasteful, conveyed the right messaging, and it always felt like appropriate because like you get what they were doing with it. Like none of the eccentricness was like misplaced.
Yeah, like the actually dramatic parts, the like the heavy parts where it actually dealt with the addicts and the people going through the situations. I thought were very tasteful and like normal levels of drama, right? Like a normal drama show. But where they kind of went over the top with things is with Purdue,
Yep.
their sales reps, the interactions with the doctors, which while, that stuff equally as serious, it's not like somebody ODing on drugs and dying and them like going like to 11 on the over the top knob. um I don't know if what I'm trying to say is making sense, but do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, because they kind of have three distinct stories, almost three distinct shows happening at the same time. You have a Wolf of Wall Street vibe, like pharma company sales, like up, how they came up and ran their business story, where it's like over the top drugs, women, parties, shitty white collar shenanigans, right? But then, and that's one tone in those scenes in that story it's telling. The another one is the main character who's the FBI agent. I think it was FBI, or worked for a department in the government for investigating.
Edie Flowers.
Yeah, her story where she's kind of like a narrator in all of this, and she's telling the new people that are investigating the situation, like everything she knows, and like everything she's in, like it's all very serious tone. She's very serious about what she's doing. And she kind of interacts with this ridiculousness that are Purdue and their sales reps, right? So that's a little cross pollination of those stories. But then we have like you said, that's a really good point, that the whole like story of the family and people who actually get hooked on it, and like how it's affecting the people that are prescribed it. That is like a traditional like family drama, right? Like
Mm.
true and true. And that doesn't have too much interaction with the other stories, but like when they cross pollinate, um, the right tone gets carried into it.
Yeah.
Because when that's like when the doctors and the addicts all start interfering with the sales reps for Purdue, the sales reps are really like brought back to earth, and
Mm.
they show them like fighting, trying not to realize how shitty of people they might be
Right.
for what they're doing.
The scene with Shannon Schaefer and Edie Flowers there in the finale, Shannon being the new like pill bunny recruit, right? That ends up making it onto the Purdue sales team. She ends up kind of giving a disposition to Edie Flowers and is like having a breakdown because exactly what you said, she realized the weight of the kind of what she helped cause. Also, off the back of you know the previous episode where she like almost drowns in a pool after
Mm-hmm.
getting high on oxy. And I thought it was like kind of cringe, but also kind of funny where she gets done like spilling her guts, and Edie's like, "Yeah, I'm not a therapist, bro."
Yeah, I thought that was especially cold, and I thought that was interesting. Yeah, because like that's the point in the story where you feel like she would not have done that, but she totally just like stiff armed her in that conversation.
Yeah.
Because she just can't when it comes to these people, if you will, and like the things that they're doing, because she is like the only person that's really up to speed with like the nature of this, and they do a good job, I think, her unraveling that with like her boss, or she has two bosses, right? And like
Yeah.
they need a crime, but like there's no explicit or implicit crime being committed
Right.
by anyone, which is like the insane part of it, which makes sense though. I mean, there really isn't much of a crime, unfortunately, I guess, in what they were doing at the time. And that was kind of like that whole situation is like, well, how do you fix something that is inherently not right without
Yeah.
it just did not have a law or something to match it. But like obviously anyone would kind of agree that like, while not necessarily criminal offense, like it's also not correct what is happening.
Yeah. Probably not like net positive for society. Um, but yeah, so I guess maybe like a good place to go now would be um, to kind of give like a synopsis of what like actually is happening in the mini series here. So basically, like Nick said, you kind of have those three stories kind of playing out. You have Edie Flowers and her investigation into Purdue Pharma for basically selling Oxycontin, which is essentially a candy-coated heroin pill. That's one story. The other story is following which Sackler is it? I always get all the Sacklers confused. Richard Sackler, played by Matthew Broderick, like his rise into power, the creation of, you know, Oxycontin and its play into the rise of Purdue Pharma, and then it like blowing up and being just like a massive cash cow. And with that story, you also have Britt and Shannon, the pill or the sales reps that are going out and pushing Oxycontin onto all the
ponytails.
Exactly. That's story 2. Story 3 is following the Krieger family, the husband and father, Glenn, mechanic, gets hurt at work, prescribed Oxycontin, becomes addicted, becomes an addict, and follows that journey with, you know, him and how the addiction, you know, tore apart his family and ultimately led to his demise. All these stories interweaving throughout each episode of the 6-episode series, ultimately to say Big Pharma bad, be careful, don't get addicted to drugs. Essentially.
Yeah, essentially. The issue with the problem is like there isn't a hardline message for anyone other than like a retro on something that simply happened that no one really had any control over. Right? Like, who's to say like it is the government's place to law and regulate that sort of activity? It never really been done before, right? Outside of saying Richard was some sort of like devil incarnate, what's to stop anyone from like, you know, having an idea, making a product and selling it, you know, within the lines. And there's another show on Netflix or movie, Pain Hustlers, that has Chris Evans in it. That one's a good one I watched as well. And that one had a good correlation, or they made a good point in that one where it was also following sales reps, right? And how they took a drug and they made it like number one, through like shady sales tactics. And the point they made was like, there's the speed limit, but they're going to go just over it. So if the speed limit is 65, we're going to do 67. And then, you know, anytime you're just kind of outside the lines, you get hit with fines and things like that. So usually in like pharma and other like big companies, like breaking the rules, if it's not by a lot, is really just a matter of money and fines. So that's where they get a lot of leeway in terms of how they run their business.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, maybe it's just like my mindset. There you go. I couldn't think of the word. Maybe it's just my greater like outlook on life, right? Like my 30,000 foot view take on life. I am more of an optimist than a pessimist. So like there's two sides to every story, right? We get this side, obviously, not a fan of Big Pharma, drugs, you know, this whole situation. I mean, obviously Oxy was clearly abused by the masses. Like that is public record, right? No one's dismissing that. But I sometimes I just have a hard time thinking that like I was kind of telling you this, and I think it was in Discord, Nick, that like, you know, people put on their tinfoil hats and fire up their like conspiracy scented candles, and like I'll always think that everything that turns out to be bad
Right.
was some sort of nefarious plot by someone.
Yeah.
And obviously that's kind of how this was angled, right? Arthur Sackler dies and the Sackler family is kind of in shambles, and so Richard concocts this idea of improving a painkiller that they're already kind of trying to sell but is not really going anywhere, improving it, rebranding it, and selling it under, Purdue instead of whatever other shell corporation they were owning at the time. Like, his whole plan is to just make something so his family, gets tons of money, which very well may be the case. But also, I mean, I don't know. I feel like
I mean, yeah,
maybe he was trying to do something that was intended to be like a net positive beneficial thing for people, and then you know it is a highly addictive thing and it was selling a ton, and then he starts seeing the dollars and then he's like, well, money is kind of cool, maybe I'm okay with this.
yeah,
I don't know.
it's I didn't really take it as that though, in terms of it trying to paint him out to be like some sort of criminal or demon. Because I'm sure at the end of the day, like just another,
I
you
mean,
know,
they made him literally like a legitimate psychopath.
yeah, for sure.
They definitely didn't try to paint him in any sort of positive light,
Right. Yeah. But
which
I
is
think
fine.
that
It
was
served it's the purpose. I understand that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think that was layered though with enough of the creative liberties around his character and like the how they made his what was that his uncle
Yeah, his uncle Arthur.
kind of like the voice in his head, like either
Yeah.
making him do it or coaching him through it. Um, to where like I think in reality any like I think the common sense thing would be that that isn't the case. More so, you just have the case of right had an IP, really took it, evolved it, like you said, found a way to market it. Right now, was it done probably carelessly, without a lot of empathy or care for how it might impact people? Definitely,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I don't think they quite thought through the repercussions once it started flowing.
and that's the problem. Is like, is there an inherent crime in that? And that's the problem that the law side of it had was there is no crime being committed under the laws of man. So that's why it's been elusive, and only like 20, 30 years later that any sort of judgment has been able to be handed down, just to hold someone accountable, right?
Mhm.
And you know, yeah, Purdue. I mean, that's the problem though. Is like this was kind of like a um, almost a one-time thing. People correlate it to like the crack epidemic, obviously, but obviously in a different socioeconomic situation. This obviously struck like in Ohio here, like
Shout
just
out
poor folk in the country,
Carroll County.
getting hurt, getting prescribed OxyContin, and um, that's the thing. Like, I guess selling. I don't know if selling was like is like the right verb. It's more like um, it was selling. They were selling it. You know what I mean? Like I don't. That's the weird area where it's like they did show like where doctors were hesitant, right? And like
Mm,
doctors had their heads on their shoulders at the beginning, but they flashed all this money in front of them and slowly just ate away at any of that.
yeah.
And they were more so just having them push it upon people. And I think that's it where kind of more of like a slightly criminal mindset starts to set in where you know what you're doing in the back of your mind or you don't at all, but it doesn't change at the end of the day that what you're doing is not correct. And that I mean that's the doctor's faults too.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah. You got to
there's
like use judgment, right?
so and I like how I mean in Pain Hustlers um they also had the point about the cancer like um morphine, right? Morphine, opium, they were words associated with death. And they even did in this show, they did the whole like study.
Oh yeah, the
It was trying
little
to
focus group.
yeah, a little focus group. And that's because that's what this level of pain treatment was associated with, like cancer patients. And that's what people commonly thought about it. But like they were able to rebrand it completely and even get people who knew that to forget that. And it's all okay because it's going to be under the management of the doctors prescribing it. So it's just like everyone kind of hiding behind an excuse somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So why don't you take me through? I don't know. Like, what are your uh, like impressions of? I don't know. Let's start with the presentation, right? We kind of talked about the stylization of some of the points they're trying to make, but how did you feel this was presented, like cinematography wise, visually, things like that?
Yeah, they don't. They don't. I think I really liked it. The way they framed everything, and everything's like very close shot too, because like you wouldn't know it was Ohio or where they're at all without them saying that in context.
Yeah.
'Cause you didn't get any like panning shots of the city or even much landscape because everything was like always very focused on the people.
Mm-hmm.
In every scene, everything's just kind of otherwise a generic like pharmaceutical company office, some, doctors, even like plaza, right? In like some country town.
Yeah.
So I like those choices because it really focuses it on the people. It is a people story. Um, but also the way they, there are three tones, three different types of shows happening. Um, Yeah, and the cinematography, I mean, I don't know if there's anything like special or particular there, but when they went to like the montages, I thought the montages,
Dude, the montages were so good.
yeah, good use of montages, and like the way they kind of paged to them and from them was always good because I think every episode sort of had one, at least one like notable montage because that was kind of like the summation of the episode was kind of the montage. I feel like the
Mm-hmm.
like the main point.
Yeah,
Is that
and
go ahead?
I was just gonna say, and I really I appreciated the way they handled kind of like the exposition narration happening by Edie Flowers. At first, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it when the series started, but I think they used the narration there pretty good and tactfully, sprinkled throughout. It wasn't like an entire episode Edie is telling you everything that's happening on screen, but
Right.
the way they sprinkled that in and out, I thought was really good.
Yeah,
Um,
because every episode started that way with her getting to a different part of the story. I
yeah,
think.
and how they like explained the narration, I thought also pretty
Yep.
well done, because it's not just
Her narrative.
this agent who was working this case telling you what's going on. No, she's like giving a deposition, about the case, so that explains why she's talking about the case.
Yep.
They didn't necessarily have to do that.
No. Yeah, and there's always just little details too in terms of like very early on, like that was might have been episode 1 or 2, where like she realized he was sitting, like Richard was sitting in the same chair she was giving the deposition,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
and she like made them take the chair out of the room and get a new chair. Um, I thought that was intense. I thought that was like over the top at first, but it makes sense once you know more about her character, and then obviously you learn more about who, in her eyes, Richard is. And I think maybe Richard's painted the way he is in this because it is her narrating, and that is probably how she would envision a person like that. Because another like really cool, I mean, this is kind of in terms of like presentation, in terms of a cool scene was when she and her people went to Purdue's offices for a meeting with him. He
Yeah.
purposely was just like not in the meeting, but he was playing with his dog.
Like
Got
throwing the ball against the window of the conference room.
Yeah, and she wasn't allowed in, so she's sitting there just in the lobby watching him and knowing it's him when he should be doing something what they consider far more serious. So I just thought that was like a clever way to like intertwine the very serious story narration that she's doing, and even taking her a little bit out of the narration. She's actually a character in the story at that point. And then you have who is usually a very sensationalist character, Richard, being kind of eccentric, right, per
Yeah.
usual. But I think if you were her sitting in that seat, he would seem like a lunatic
Yeah.
in all of this.
Yeah. And the eccentric uh, actions that were happening there were like the opposite end of the eccentric spectrum that we're used to seeing Richard be, more like the monotone, like precision surgeon in terms of like social interactions and just being able to like absolutely knife through a situation and just be like ruthless and emotionless about it. And then in that scene you're talking about, he's just like acting like a 14-year-old kid playing with his dog while his lawyers are meeting with the federal government while they're trying to like bring down his company. Thought it was pretty interesting. On that note, like, how do you think they handled the characters that we see in terms of like how they were written, but also how they were acted?
I mean, I think I had so obviously like Miss Flowers, she was great. Um, Richard, the what's his name? Um,
Sackler,
no, the drug addict character. What's their last name?
Glenn,
Yeah, Glenn and his family was all really good. It was the drug reps. They were, I think, like a weaker point for me. Maybe it's more so their characters, just because they aren't like overly in depth characters. But I mean, they did try to like give them a little bit more back, like more backbone to their characters, but like it never really came across effectively.
yeah,
Like they're both kind of just like bimbos, and then like you would think the one kind of was going to have a a turnaround point, but um, she kind of stiffs armor in the diner and is like, "I'm not your counselor. Like, there's no hope for you either."
yeah,
So, I mean, and it was always confusing to me because like the understudy, sales rep Schaefer, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
she,
Our Ohio gal.
yeah, she. The issue I had with her, and I don't know if this is like writing or acting, but like, or a combination of the two, but like, she was always kind of like aware that she was probably not doing something right, but continued to go along with it anyways. So like the longer she was doing that, the less like redeeming qualities she was having. I thought she was like gonna flip during the whole like here are my notes thing. But instead she's totally seduced by being flown down to headquarters and being made like top seller, right? Arbitrarily
Yeah,
just like suppress her from saying anything. Um totally smoothed over by that. Even though like her character is written as if she's like not gonna be easily tempted, but in hindsight, when you get to the end of the series, she's completely tempted the whole time. It makes
yeah.
little effort until the very end to do
And
something with it.
I think that like her character, now that you say that, and I'm like intentionally thinking about it, what you described her character as is kind of how I see um, the people, figures, companies, whatever, that end up resulting in a bad situation, like unfolding instead of,
Right.
how a lot of the conspiracy theorist, paranoid um, people of society who always think that again, I'm not saying there aren't people or companies that set out with nefarious ambitions, but I feel like a large majority are kind of like Shannon here, where they get involved in something, they create something, whatever, thinking that they're bringing a net positive to society or whatever situation they're in. realize like, oh, this actually isn't doing something great, but
Mhm.
then are blinded by, in this case, the greed, the showering of money and like luxury and stuff kind of erases the net negatives that they're bringing.
Yeah. And situations like this always make me think about like the general susceptibility like society has um to propaganda or like being tricked when it comes to that stuff, because obviously like in the early whatever, like before like we had the internet, right? Or like television. No, I would say before the internet is kind of like the turning point is
It's also a great album, or no, because of the internet.
yeah, because of the internet. Right, we both feel we all feel like we are susceptible to being like a hive mind or like more mindless. But I
Mm-hmm.
think but I think at the same time maybe we are more mindless about some things. We are way more aware of other things. Because before the internet, think of all or one, think of how easy it was for, obviously governments to run propaganda and just convince entire populations what was happening, cough World War II on all fronts. But think about like in the 80s, the 90s, in like the 2000s, like the whether it was, I think it was like Vera Bradley was like this, obviously the sales reps for the drug companies, all the different pyramid scheme or like really eccentric sales groups that like people got involved in, that we now kind of make fun of as pyramid scheme ones, but like the culty nature that they curated into these people to sell their products.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't know. Do you know anyone today like that would be easily trapped in those situations? Maybe they're out there and I just don't know anybody. But I just feel like that would not fly as easily where people were just like, oh yeah, we're selling the shit out of this awesome miracle drug that's gonna make everyone feel better.
I think I know a few people, and I think you might know some of the same people, Nick, which
Oh,
I'll
okay.
tell you offline, and you'll probably cry laughing.
Darn. Okay. They're still out
But no, I think it still exists because, um, yeah, I mean, people are people, and I feel like with enough charisma or confidence, you
there. Yeah.
can kind of convince anyone really of anything. Um, but
Dan has a good plug behind the scenes. House of Fall of House of Usher. We just talked about that. Another drug related pharma company gone bad theme, right, in our media. So
mhm,
it's all over the place.
yeah, um, I I've really enjoyed kind of the the wide variety and range of characters, um, and like presentations of characters we got in this series. I thought it was really cool. Um, I like at first hated, but then ended up loving every scene that Mortimer and Raymond Sackler were in. The two older Sackler guys on the board that always fought with each other.
Yeah.
There's they're like so cringy and so dumb, but like also hilarious in like every scene because of how over the top they're
They
like.
got more and more over the top, especially the other one that was like excessively paranoid about everything. Like he
Yeah,
was losing his mind.
yeah,
Again, another like pharma company family,
yeah.
like just going down the tubes.
And oh, this is what I was gonna say because you're talking about like the cult like behavior or whatever of like these pyramid schemes and stuff. But I obviously 99% of my brain believes that they did not have sales conferences and like sales meetings where everyone is chanting Oxycontin.
Yeah,
Like there there was not a conference where an entire stadium of sales reps is chanting Oxycontin. But I loved in the show, like again, this is that stylistic, like over the top presentation to just prove a point. Um, it goes into exactly what you're saying, that the way that some of these uh, schemes, for lack of a better word, are able to create like a cult essentially of employees that are like so bought in, and this is all that matters, right? The Miami sales conference, so great. Like
Yeah, and
Sackler comes out looking like the Terminator. The entire conference is chanting Oxycontin. They have like the plushy mascot like singing a song all about selling Oxycontin. I'm like, this is amazing.
yeah, and I think like that's a really good example of like the tongue in cheek. I think obviously it's exaggerated, but it's not far off from, I think, more so the feeling and like the idea of what was going on there. I mean, the sales conferences, I mean, they can get intense either like as parties or as like everyone's there and like they're gonna say yes to whatever because they're there for free, they're partying for free, they're making a ton of money doing it. And it does weird stuff to people. So I did enjoy that a lot, but obviously, like you hope it was not quite like that to a T.
I
Like,
don't know.
please tell me like this is exaggerated, or you know what? I would not be surprised if they gave me some side by side footage and they're like, no, it really
Yeah,
happened like that.
not gonna lie, the song though was actually kind of a bop.
Yeah.
Not
Well,
gonna
that's the
lie.
other thing. It was like, I mean, a jingle. They just had to pay someone to write a cool jingle, right? And like, you have that
Yeah.
much money. Like, what's going to stop you from being like, hey, write us a cool like theme song for our sales conference?
Yeah.
Companies are
Um,
against doing stuff like that.
that's true. That's true. I was a big fan of Taylor Kitsch, who played
Yes.
Glenn Krager. I'm also
We
glad
want to
that
talk about that.
he has been in other things of which I have not seen. Um, his story was like so devastating, and he just like played the pants off of Glenn. Um, oh wow, he was John Carter. John Carter.
Yeah, he's a ton of in a ton. He's one of those where like he's in a lot of stuff if once you start paying attention.
Is he like? Is he like? Oh my gosh!
Yeah. Yep.
He played David Koresh in
Yep.
Waco: The Aftermath.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Um, and well, obviously Waco: The Aftermath being the follow-up to Waco. I did not realize he played David Koresh. Oh, that's hilarious. Is he? Wow, he was in True Detective. Is he the younger version of the guy that we can never remember his name? And I'm not even joking. I literally cannot remember.
Wait, not our boy Jared Harris.
Yeah, yeah. Is he the younger
Oh,
Jared Harris? Is he Is that his career trajectory right now?
that's a good point. He might be like a 30-year younger Jared Harris.
Yeah, he's just like in everything, and we can never remember his name.
Yeah, but he's also legitimately a good actor, and
Yeah,
like you enjoy everything he's in. It's just you don't remember who
yeah.
he is. You don't remember his name.
We just drew an amazing parallel live right here.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, his story was tragic, and I thought he did an amazing job in that role, and um, is like that whole situation is like so sad. Obviously, like his
Well, I mean,
stepson being like a giant doofus and literally being the reason that he got hurt and ended up getting hooked on, well, I guess not getting hooked, but like being prescribed oxy.
yeah,
But then Glenn not being able to like be responsible and not get addicted, which is easy for me to say as someone who is not addicted to a very addictive drug. Um, and then seeing it just literally rip that family apart and then have zero redemption. It was hard, man. But that's the beauty of this show, because that's reality. That's what happens.
yeah, and while like that and that's my favorite part of the show. In comparison to the rest of it, while the rest of it was good and was telling a story, that was all of the like, that's all like you said, like not conspiracy theory, but that's more of like in the minds of the beholders, right? Like this is something entirely difficult to grasp, uh, like how this all happened. So it's like we have to embellish it in our imagination, something on the other side of this, right? To make sense of it all. But what we do know and is well documented, and probably everyone knows somebody at this point that has gone through something like that. I mean that was the most like accurate thing. Like you said, he nailed it, the performance, and also just like the reality of like how that situation unfolds, and a lot of just like truth too, and like the way that addiction works is it like it affects different people differently, like all substances. But there's far more people that are susceptible to the chemical altering that does to your body, and they touched on that in this when the one doctor, when he got took to the hospital, was like, wait, what's his dose? Like we can't just take him off of it, like he will physically die if we remove the substance from his system all at
Mm-hmm.
once. Like you can't cold turkey it because you will physically die. That's why they have methadone that they give addicts to wean them off of it,
Mm-hmm.
because like your body's chemistry is physically changed, and that's the problem with opium, opiates, and all of that. So it's not like an addiction of a lifestyle, like maybe like marijuana or like cocaine gives you, where like opiates like physically alter you, and that's
Yeah.
the problem. Like obviously anyone can cold turkey many other drugs. You can cold turkey alcohol. Um, that really sucks for actual alcoholics.
Yeah.
Weed,
Cigs.
nicotine,
You can.
you have withdrawal symptoms and stuff like that, but like opiates, like you just alternately die if you get it, or you
Yeah.
die. And the way spoiler, he dies at the end. That because he relapsed and did it, then the body can't like physically handle it, or you do too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Then he ODs. It's
Yeah,
rough.
then you OD, and that's why you hear so many people where they're like, "Oh, he was doing so good," and like I thought everything was fine. Well, all it takes is that one touchback, and
Mm-hmm.
it's done. And it wasn't like he went extra
It wasn't
hard.
even a bad touchback either. Like he had some loud neighbors, checked on him. They were either just passed out or OD'd and had pills sitting there. Like it's not like he went to a party and people were like,
Right.
"Yo, you want to do some oxy?" He's like walked in on somebody who was in the act of ODing and saw pills. That was it.
That was a good come up. Not in hindsight, but like at the time, like that was a shitload of pills they had. But they did a good job. Like, I mean, they had that like dude in the van, like picking up people to get prescribed to collect their prescriptions to sell them. And also that was a good situation in terms of like when he just goes into his neighbors to check on them and like be like, turn the music down,
Yeah.
or TV. That's how easy it is for like
An
the chemical
actual
imbalance
addict,
in the
right?
brain, yeah, to get like flipped back, like completely unintentional. Did not plan it, did not want to.
Mm-hmm. He had
And he's
been clean for at least a month,
that
started rebuilding that relationship with his family.
month or 3 month. Yeah, he had a token coming his way.
Yeah. They said 30 days. So at least a month, maybe. I don't know how much time elapsed after that. But yeah, it was really sad to see because you really start to buy in the redemption happening because
Yeah.
he's getting clean. He's rekindling the relationships with his kids and his wife. And he seems happy. He's like staying in a motel instead of his like closed down garage. He's trying to reopen the garage. And then
We couldn't figure it out at first, but like, where is he sleeping when he was like a hard addict? And I was like, then they showed the garage reopen. I'm like, oh wow, he was like sleeping in the garage, like
yeah.
close to the shop.
Yeah.
and I think there's a lot of good details, and maybe I'm just a little closer to those kind of stories from a lot of people I know, where it's just like when his stepson goes to like his friend's house or whatever, and he shows up there, um,
Hmm.
and like literally the man of the house like just physically tells him to get lost. Like it's unfortunately because like a lot of times we like to preach like empathy and like openness, and like it's hard though with like certain types of people, especially in these situations, because when he did let him back in a later scene, like it was already set up for failure. Like he just needed some
Yeah.
money to, you
Oh,
know,
so
it,
sad.
yeah, and there isn't like a rational way to approach it. And that's the problem. It's like an epidemic, is because there's no good way to fix it.
Yeah.
Because it's more of a physical um
It becomes
alteration to the population.
yeah, it
And like
becomes
Dad
like a
said,
literal need and less of
yeah,
a desire.
yeah, and like Dad said, like cigs and alcohol, like those withdrawals are rough and stuff, but like people can make it through them. But also, like those two things don't kill you when you get back on them necessarily right away, at least, or intentionally. But it's just like a problem that has no easy answer. But then it's unfortunate that it was a problem that was like haphazardly created, with no real fault to anyone,
Right.
unless you're a drug company and you get hit with some fines. But even at the end, like what, 5 years, some fines, 60 months was like the highest one in jail or something like that. Or I'm thinking of
Yeah.
Paint Hustlers where they handed out sentencing.
Mm.
Uh, but like nothing like substantial there either. And really, that's just the set precedent for other companies to encourage them not to do these types of things. There
Yeah.
still isn't anything that says you can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Because again, like it is, and I mean, the main intent of these things, right, is a benefit.
I mean, it's quite the notion. Like, address pain. Like, just remove everyone's pain.
Yeah. I mean,
It's a novel idea.
some people need painkillers. Just maybe don't make them heroin.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, it's a fine line, I guess. I mean, you
Literal,
can't just
literal opium, like in a pill. Um, and I
yeah,
mean, there's a little bit of messaging there too. That's kind of like more of like an American facade thing, where it's like just package it up different, call it something else, and it's fine, right? Like 2000s, we in 90s we call them terrorists, right? They're not people, they're terrorists. Easy answer to it. It's not an addictive drug. It's a pill your doctor prescribes you. What could go
yeah,
wrong? We
yeah.
trust
He's
and
a
love
doctor.
the doctor.
Yeah,
Um, but it's funny because I've always felt that way about like the where I grew up in that small town. Um, like the doctor that like everybody, like my whole family would go to. Like I've never like trusted that situation. I'm like, come on, you're a doctor in like a small town. Like, why are you a doctor in a small town? There's the one in the show here that loves his work and runs it out of his house, sure. But like, dude who's just slinging like OxyContin out of the
mad
local
scripts
plaza.
out of yeah.
That was funny. Like, I was like, okay, this dude probably did not have like a McLaren or where the hell they showed him driving with all like the addicts lined up outside the office. I'm like, I hope this is a little embellished, but like, please tell me no one like ever saw such a scene.
Right, man. And I we talked about it at the start of the episode, but um, the cold opens to every episode.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that they added those in, because again, it just really hammers home the weight of like the end result to a lot of these people, right? And it doesn't they don't have happy endings, and um, a point that you see proven in a lot of stories and lessons about addiction and things like that is it's a very widespreading hurt, right? It's not just the addict that is being hurt.
Right.
It branches out into families, friends, relationships, things like that. And while I love how each little testimony starts out the exact same, it's the disclaimer of like, hey, while a lot of this is based off of true stuff, we change the names of people, blah blah blah. But what isn't what isn't fiction is my story of my kid or my spouse or whatever. And it was just like each story heart wrenching, and the person telling it like fighting back tears and stuff. It was just, man, it was so good, and I'm so glad they added that. Like instead of just text on a screen or like a text scroll or something like that, it's a person in front of a camera, and you see the raw emotions of them having to relive a horrible time in their life that was the result of what was being talked about.
And I think I again, from like a direction point, creating a series like this, to come at it from so many different angles, right? To even like a little bit supernatural, because he's literally talking to his dead uncle.
Yeah.
And like those are like a constant reminder that what you're watching and what it's about, and like somehow helps inform like the really embellished parts of it.
Mhm.
It all just works together really well, and that was the most impressive part of it, to me.
Right. Yeah, because like with the style of show, with a cold open like that, I would expect like
Big sad.
A Glenn show, right?
Yeah, big sad all the time.
Yeah, but no, it would start out with a testimonial like that, and then cut immediately to an absolutely over the top montage of like Purdue Pharma and the Sacklers just being like so rowdy. It's like, oh yeah, sorry, let me can I first like wipe the tear from my cheek from the mother crying over her dead son, like before you slam like Rick Ross in my face and like an FDA agent in a Speedo. Like, come on.
And I don't know if this was a montage, but the like when she started, uh, what's her first name? Flowers,
Edie.
Edie Flowers. When like it was her, and like when they started seeing the pill stuffy like everywhere, um, just like at the pharmacy, on the shelf, at the doctor's office, and like whatever that montage was, I thought that was also really good.
Yeah.
Just like a little thing like that, but like, did they really have? I imagine they might have had like some sort of mascot. It's funny to think about. Like, did they?
Dad, look it
That's
up.
really funny.
Did
Or did they have that?
Oxycontin have a plushy mascot? But yeah, man.
Because that was kind of the part in her story where she was like piecing the conspiracy together in her
Yeah.
mind. And there's this like just blatant clue everywhere. It's the giant light blue
Where's the
plushie.
Tylenol plushie?
I think that's an Eminem music video, where all the drugs are animated. Also an album cover.
Oh, nice.
Dad said behind the scene, they did similar to how they pushed nicotine in the early days when it first came out. He was thinking of the show Mad Men. They knew it was harmful, but they're after the money.
Mm.
Again, and that's a good point. Is like this, what Richard did was not um, a new idea, right? For drug and substance companies. It just so happens that the this time in application, it was with a substance that was so destructive. Um, versus like nicotine, which is maybe it kills you slowly over time, but I still always acknowledge that there are people who are like 100 years old that smoke every day of their lives. I don't know. But like nothing new. It just so happened that like, hey, we're gonna put like heroin, opium in like an old pill, and say it's
Yeah.
gonna fix everything. And I guess the idea that like they drew it down where it's like everyone was like, yeah, that's what you give cancer patients that are like literally dying to ease the pain. No, 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 no. Like You got a headache?
Yeah.
Like, it
Hey,
slowly just kept lowering the threshold for, like, what and who should have it.
pain makes you a slave. Oxycontin gives you freedom. So Dad was able to dig up a tweet from the very trustworthy Snake Lively from back in 2020 of an actual Oxycontin plushie. So
Mhm.
I don't know the legitimacy of that and if those were actually floating around like in the 90s. But there was a plushie tweeted 3 years before this this miniseries was made. So I don't know. Maybe that was a thing. That's great. That'd be wild. Yeah, and Dad also says something about Mr. Robot. Yeah, Elliot and his crippling Adderall addiction.
Yeah, but he did OxyContin too, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it wasn't that like his first meeting with the illustrious Vera.
Yeah, because he would do because he wanted because Vera was the only one that had the methadone script, so he could wean himself off of
Manage it out.
yeah, because he had everything under control, which brilliant part of that show because Elliot could do that. Like that dude knew everything. He's like, I'm gonna buy two drugs. I'm gonna get methadone and OxyContin so I can manage my OxyContin addiction
Yeah.
appropriately. See, if only everyone was that smart.
I will not go on a tangent, but Vera remains one of my all-time favorite characters, maybe ever.
He's definitely top 10. I don't want to give him a top 5, but like he's top. That's hard. Top 5 characters. We shouldn't even do that ever as a topic. Like what? I don't even know where my mind's going right now because I'm like, well, what about this? What about that? There's
Yeah, that would be very hard.
You have to like exclude major IPs.
Maybe next March Madness, top characters.
No Star Wars, no Harry Potter, no Lord of the Rings, no Marvel, any of that. Then you do your top 5 top 10 characters.
I can dig it. But yeah, back on track here. Yeah, I think overall, yeah, I mean, this is like a relatively new series, so I was shocked that I wasn't aware of it when you recommended it, but in knowing that it was pretty recent, I guess not so shocking. But I hope people are able to give this a watch because I think it's very interesting. Um, Interesting take on some actual events that happened and that we still kind of see the repercussions of today. But yeah, I don't know. I think it was pretty well done. I was impressed with it.
Yeah, and a big thing for me is like watchability, right? And when you're limited on time or you're overwhelmed with how many things you want to watch, 45-minute episodes, they are entertaining, but also like very grounded at the same time because you feel like you're watching something important, but you're also being entertained while doing it. You're not inundated with too much information. Everything's generally entertaining, even with like the sick montages ranging all the way to like the depressing drug addictions that people have. So it goes by quick and it's like 6 45-minute episodes. So relatively short in the consideration of modern series goes. This is an 8 1-hour episode. So, I think also we have the newborn and like one night we watched like 3 of these episodes before we realized they're 45 minutes and my wife was like, did we just watch 3 episodes of something? And I was like, disclaimer, they're 45 minutes long, but yes, we did. Still impressive.
Yeah. So go give it a watch and make sure you let us know what you thought about it. Is there anything else you'd like to get off your chest, Nick, before we wrap up? Because I think I don't know what else there is left to say about PainKiller here.
Oh yeah, other than like it's a good show. It's a good series, good watch. And there are other things out there if you are looking to go on a binger of like Big Pharma's Bad Pharma. Go watch The Fall of House of Usher. Watch Pain Hustlers on Netflix that has Chris Evans in it. That was also
you're starting to sound like one of those doctors, Nick.
Yeah,
one of those pill bunnies. Like, let's temper
prescribe you a Chris. Is it the Chris's right? It's like Chris Evans, Chris
Hemsworth,
Chris.
Rock. I don't know. It was the next Chris that came to my mind.
Chris.
Okay,
Is there another one?
I'm
Who's-
sure there's
who's,
probably a lot. Chris
Star Lord, isn't he a Chris? Or no? Yeah, he is. Dad's shaking his
Pratt,
head.
right?
Yeah, Chris Pratt. Yeah. Chris Evans, Pain Hustlers. Go watch it. Not as good as this show, but it's a movie. It's only 2 hours. Conveys the exact same message, but about a different company and a different drug, but same problem.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Nice.
get it.
Thank you, sir, for recommending it. And like I said, make sure you subscribe here. Leave a comment. Let us know what you thought about Painkiller. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you tune in next week, where we'll definitely have a topic that we'll talk about and you'll listen to, because that's what we do here. Definitely not just saying this because I don't remember what we'll be releasing after this episode, but there will be another. I believe Poke Boys Season 3 will still be in progress, so make sure you check that out. And yeah.
Have a wonderful evening, day, afternoon, morning.
Yeah, I don't think there's any other time of day. So I think you covered all the bases there.
Nice. Everyone's happy then.